Good morning, boys and girls. Today is Tuesday, April 29th, 2025. It is day 16 of our life cycle of a chicken unit. How many days are there in all for the chickens to hatch? 21. So if we start at 21 and go down to 16, how many days left do we have in this process? Let's start at 21 and count down. 20, 19, 18, 17, 16. We have 5 days left. All right, we're going to quickly review back through all of our slides up to day 16. And then today we're going to start talking about the hatching process. We have a couple of new vocabulary words I want to talk to you about that have to do with turning the eggs and then also cleaning the chicken's body. So let's take a look at that. For day 16, this is what's happening on the embryo. On the inside, it says the claws and beak are now fully hardened. So let's take a look at our vocabulary words. We have turner and preening. I'm going to start with turner. A turner is something that rotates the eggs every few hours. Now, we've talked about this a little bit throughout this process. If you have an older model incubator, one that does not have a built-in turner, an automatic turner in it, you have to physically turn the eggs yourself. See how they wrote an O on the top of these eggs? They put an X on one side and an O on the other side so that they know every time they turn the eggs over which side they're on. This is the way I started out when I first started hatching chickens in an incubator. I had an incubator that was actually made of styrofoam and very simple. So it did not have a turner in there. It just had a flat bottom on it with styrofoam on the bottom, styrofoam on the top, and a thermometer hanging down like this that read the temperature. And I was responsible for everything else, for turning the eggs over 3 times a day, for regulating the humidity inside, for regulating the temperature. Now we've gone from something very simple to something a little more complex, a little more automatic. If you are in an industry that raises chickens, you might have automatic machines like this that have trays and trays and trays of eggs. And inside this machine, it basically does it all for you. It regulates the temperature, the humidity. It turns the eggs at the right time. So this is a very, very neat thing that we've gone from something so simple to something automatic. It makes our process a whole lot easier. But remember that all of these machines, no matter how complex they are just trying to emulate what the mama hen does in nature by herself. It's pretty awesome. We've talked about this a good bit, about how these birds with such tiny little brains already know exactly what to do. So it's very important. Why is it important? Do you remember why the egg cannot just sit on one side or the other for 21 days and just be left there? Why is that important? Because the chicken will start to stick to one side. That's why it's so important to rotate the chicken over about 3 times a day. And in nature, what happens is she gets up to go get food, water, go to the bathroom, and she scratches her talons back. And when she does, she rotates all of the eggs herself. Isn't that amazing? All right, so our word today is turner. Try to use that in your writing. Something that rotates the eggs every few hours. The second word we're going to look at is preening. This is how chickens clean themselves. Now, if you've ever watched a cat clean themselves, what does a cat do? Licks themselves all over, right? What does a dog do? How does a dog clean itself? They don't just come inside and hop in the bathtub themselves, do they? So how do animals in the wild or domesticated animals clean themselves? The way that a chicken cleans themselves is they actually do 2 different things. They take a dirt bath and then they preen themselves. So preening is where they pull on their feathers. They kind of reach back and they pull on the feathers to get off things that are on them. So the first thing we're going to look at is a dirt bath. Chickens absolutely love to take a bath in dirt. And what that does is it keeps their feathers nice and clean. So I'm going to go out of this one for just a minute and get on a little video that shows us a chicken having a dirt bath, okay? We're just going to watch a little bit of it. So what they do is they get in the dirt, they kick it all up, it goes in between every feather, and it creates almost like an oil, a layer of oil around their feathers so that they don't have things like mites and parasites stick to themselves. Isn't that cool? So they do this every day. They'll get out there and they'll kick themselves up some dirt and get it in between all their feathers to keep themselves nice and clean. And then once they do that, if they find anything on their feathers, this is called preening, where they reach back and they pull on their feathers to get it off of themselves. How do they do that? With their beak. That beak is so important, isn't it? Because they don't have hands, they don't have fingers. The only thing they have are talons down here, and you can't use your toes for everything. So they use their beak a lot to be able to clean their body, to defend themselves from predators, to, of course, eat and drink, and even to establish who's boss, right? We've watched that with the roosters. All right, so those two things are called dirt baths and preening. This is the dirt bath, and preening is when they pick their own feathers to get themselves clean. All right, boys and girls, these are our vocabulary words for today, Turner and preening. And on day 16, the claws and beak are now fully hardened. We have 5 days left. How exciting!